Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 39, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing super well. Looking at this card, UFC on ESPN 39, UFC Vegas 58, I think this one's going to be. We've talked about a couple of the recent fight night cards that didn't have a whole lot to offer on paper, and some of them turned out to be just fantastic evenings of entertainment. Ones where it wasn't just cool finishes, but we learned things about up and coming prospects. We learned things about kind of the hierarchy in different divisions. Even compared to the last couple of free fight night cards, this one is struggle. I'm going to pop a surprise question at you. This is a 13 fight card. The top three fights on the card are Dos Anjos versus Fiziev, Caio Borralho versus Armen Petrosyan, and Douglas Silva de Andrade versus Said Nurmagomedov. I want you to forget those. The first 10 fights on the card, so 20 fighters. How many of those 20 fighters are above 500 in the UFC right now?
Okay, above 500 in the UFC. I have two.
Yeah, just take a. It's four, but that's still.
I was going low on purpose. I knew it had to be.
I mean, there's no debuting fighters.
How about this? Let me see if I can name the four fighters. That has a. I gotta pull up who's fighting. Above 500. Ronnie Lawrence right out the gate.
Yes.
Okay. No. Let's see. Above Austin Lingo.
Very good. Austin Lingo is 2-1 in the UFC, so you got two of the four.
All right, definitely not Shevchenko and Casey. Definitely not them. All right, Turcios.
Ricky Turcios is 1-0 in the UFC. You've got three of the four.
Okay, let's see. Not Zahabi, not them. Oh, could Michael Johnson be? Oh, no, I'm gonna hold the guess on Michael Johnson. It might be Michael Johnson. Definitely not the heavyweights.
Definitely not the heavyweights is an understatement.
Okay. How do I say the? Okay, it's either Michael Johnson or it's the. How do I say the Russian guy's name fighting Jamie Pickett?
Denis Tiuliulin.
I'm trying to think. Did he win his debut or did he lose? I can't remember. All right, I'll go Michael Johnson.
It is not Michael Johnson. It is the other one is Cynthia Calvillo. But she's 1-3 at flyweight, so it almost shouldn't count.
Okay,
like she's still above 500 because she had a great run at strawweight when she entered the UFC. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, she did start. She was like a hot prospect when she first. Yeah.
Oh, and I was wrong. There's one more. Kakhramonov in the opening fight, he's 1-0 in the UFC. So 5 out of 20. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about this card before we dig right in.
I'll say this. You know what the card is to me? Like I was trying to think, like what's the theme of the card? And you eliminated the top three fights, and that's the theme of the card. It's and it really comes down to four fighters. It comes down to in the main event, Rafael Fiziev. Is he a future contender? Said Nurmagomedov, is he a future contender if he can get by Andrade? And then the co-main event, two newcomers, Borralho, how do we say his name? Borralho, and Petrosyan. Like, one of those guys, can they enter the rankings at middleweight? Can they be on the cusp? Like, that's all it is. It's like these three guys could be futures. Kind of has a contender series feel to it. We were watching, me and my family, we like to watch TV shows again. Like, most families but we always watch things way later than everybody else. We were watching The Mandalorian, and we finished the second season, so we're all caught up. And my son's like, "No, I heard you have to like watch the credits." And then, like, when you watch a movie or a TV show, and then there's like a teaser thing or something.
Yeah.
That's how I feel like this card is. Like, you're not going to get much out of it. Like, after The Mandalorian, it was like a preview for the next Star Wars TV show. Like, that's what this is. Like, you're not going to get much out of it, but there might be like a glimpse of future things to come.
Okay. One last question.
Okay.
After this card, and I believe that I will be.
Sorry,
I'll be recapping.
Sorry, the only reason I had to say that is I'm hoping you put like hashtag Star Wars, hashtag Mandalorian, get these views like through the roof.
Yeah, of course. I believe that you will be out for the recap on this, so I'll probably be recapping it either solo or with a special guest. Over under on the cut list, 3.5.
It depends on who the guest is.
Or just mine.
I think
over under on my cut list.
I think 4 is safe because I think you're going to go the heavyweight Sherman and Vanderaa. Those are that's getting cut. Answerov versus Calvillo. There's one. Casey Shevchenko. There's one. There's 3 right there. So I just got to give me one more, so I'll go over.
Yeah. All right. Excellent. With that, we will dig right into the prelims. Bantamweights take the cage as it is Ronnie Lawrence versus Saidyokub Kakhramonov in an interesting prospect matchup. Lawrence, the 30-year-old fighting out of American top team Atlanta, is 8-1 overall. He's a perfect 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 3rd season of Dana White's Contender Series. He knocked out Vince Cachero all the way back last February, then came back this February and took a unanimous decision over Aiemann Martinez at UFC 271. He will be taking on Kakhramonov, the 26-year-old from Uzbekistan by way of Southern California, is 9-2 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. Choked out Trevin Jones in the 3rd round at UFC on ESPN Cannonier versus Gastelum last August. These 2 gentlemen are evenly matched, at least on the books as of the moment. They are both -110 as a dead even pick'em. Keith, 135 is all of a sudden a very interesting place, a very crowded place, but there's always room for another dynamic, exciting fighter who goes for the finish. These are both men fitting that description. Who gets it done?
Yeah, I mean this is a dope fight right out the start. It's definitely one of the best fights on the card. Ronnie Lawrence has looked really good so far in his run in the UFC. You mentioned him beating Mana Martinez. That's a good win. Like me, I know both you and me both like Mana Martinez as a prospect himself. Lawrence is a very poised striker. He fights out of both stances. He switches stances a lot, so he's kind of gets you guessing. He's a builder. As the fight goes on, he gets stronger and stronger. Uses feints really well. He's got fast hands, a sharp jab. He follows up with like his best strike is his right cross. I like that he works the body with power shots, kind of soften up his opponent that way. Got some good sting in his shots, good power. He loves like spinning stuff. He'll throw some spinning attacks out there. Throws lots of kicks. I think he's an underrated offensive wrestler, and he really blends his strike and his wrestling in together. As we saw in the Martinez fight, and he's hard to take down himself if you try to take him down. Now, Kakhramonov, shout out to you how you just like flowed that name off like unbelievable, especially the first name, Saidyokub, or what have you said? Well, how do I say his first name?
Saidyokub.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think this guy. I said it last time. I think this guy's a fun addition to the UFC. This guy, Askar is a good prospect. And he knocked him out in 39 seconds. Like that's how good this guy is. He's 26, so he's kind of entering his prime. He beat the brakes off of Trevin Jones in their fight. What I like about him, he gets in the pocket and he throws hard, wild, try to end the fight with every shot, punches. Has a very Vanderaa Silva looping, just catch you in the violence, just Tasmanian devil going crazy kind of style. He does load up on everything, but he has good power. He's got 5 KOs. He's a good wrestler. I mean, he fought Umar Nurmagomedov and took down Nurmagomedov, so that's all you had to know about his wrestling. Good top control. He has a submission threat. He has 3 subs in his career, and he has a cardio. Which even though he fights like Vanderaa Silva, he has this cardio that he can go hard. Like he's going hard 25 minutes in the past. So I think this fight is fire right out the gate. I'm going to go with Kakhramonov with absolutely no confidence. I think it comes down to just being the better wrestler. Like I can kind of count on him winning those scrambles. I expect to be back and forth. Give me Kakhramonov by split decision. And like usually what I do, if I'm really on the fence, if someone comes from an area that ends in Stan, I want to go that way. That's like my tiebreaker.
Yep.
So, yeah.
There we go. Keith stands the stands. And generally speaking, not a bad way to go. I feel the same way about this fight that you do. I'm interested to see how Kakhramonov's offensive wrestling lines up with Lawrence's defensive wrestling, because my guess is that Lawrence is going to want to keep this standing. And likewise, I want to see how Kakhramonov's frankly wild and aggressive approach on the feet lines up with Lawrence, who, I mean, despite the fact that his fights are always exciting and his nickname is the Heat, he's a fairly composed striker. He was fighting with, Mana Martinez, like a guy with serious knockout power at 135 and superior reach. And Lawrence did a really good job of dictating the distance, not really letting Mana get into his rhythm and really start cranking on him. I'm kind of interested to see if Lawrence can make Kakhramonov pay for being so reckless. I'm going to lean in the opposite direction here. Give me Lawrence in a really close decision, a contender for fight of the night, even though the first fight on the card almost never wins fight of the night. But put me down for a fight that will probably deserve it, and Lawrence by a really narrow decision. But like you, I have not a whole lot of confidence in this. Next up, it is the light heavyweights as Kennedy Nzechukwu and Karl Roberson take the cage. Nzechukwu, the 30-year-old Nigerian by way of Texas, is 9-3 overall. He is 3-3 since joining the UFC as a two-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He won on the first and the second seasons. After that second win, he was finally signed. He is on a two-fight losing streak right now. He got knocked out in the first round by Da Un Jung last November, and then came back and lost a split decision to Nick Negomereanu at UFC 272 in March. He will try to get things back on track against Roberson, who is mired in a three-fight losing streak of his own. The 31-year-old New Jersey native is 9-5 overall. He's 4-5 since joining the UFC out of the first season of the Contender Series. The aforementioned three-fight losing streak, Marvin Vettori, Brendan Allen, and Khalil Roundtree. The most recent of those, the Roundtree fight, was at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Ankalaev back in March, where he got knocked out by a body kick and some follow-up punches. Odds fairly close on this one, but Roberson is the slightest of favorites. He's minus 120. Nzechukwu available at even money, plus 100 out there right now. And Keith, to me, this comes down to, I think I know what Karl Roberson is at this point in his career. I'm still allured by the potential of Kennedy Nzechukwu. I haven't learned my lesson yet, but I know that I still don't trust him. He is now, this is his seventh fight in the UFC, plus he had the two fights on the Contender Series, and I still don't know what I'm going to get from one fight to the next. In one fight, he will just look like a potential contender, like his size, his power, his hand and foot speed for a guy that's as big as he is just shocking. When he's had to go to the third round, surprisingly good cardio for a guy as big as he is. I mean, he's been to the third round, I think 4 times in his UFC run so far, and he's 2-2 in those fights. So it's not like he falls off a cliff. But then other times it'll look like he started training 6 months ago, even having been at Fortis, a very good camp for developing inexperienced fighters for like 4 years now. In Roberson, he's a guy that obviously he's a very nice striker. He's an excellent kickboxer and surprisingly adept on the ground. You look at his record and he's run into trouble on the ground, but it's against really good grapplers. Like he's gotten into trouble on the ground against like Glover Teixeira, against Brendan Allen, Marvin Vettori, people that can really take care of themselves on the ground. But he's surprisingly good offensive grappler on the ground. I see more ways that Roberson can win this one. And if one guy is likely to just kind of come out and really lay an egg and put out a bad performance, it's more likely going to be Nzechukwu. So if Super Nzechukwu comes out and just busts up Roberson in 90 seconds, I won't be that surprised. But in the presence of all the unknowns about both these guys, there are a lot more about Nzechukwu. So give me Roberson to win this one. And I'll say he wins by decision, but he actually ends up putting Nzechukwu on the ground a couple times and has him in a bit of trouble.
Yeah. The way you came out the gate for Nzechukwu, I thought you were taking him. The, what do you say, Nigerian?
If you ask me tomorrow, I will.
Yeah. to the Nigerian who lives in Texas. Like his nickname should be the Nigerian Cowboy or something.
That would be great.
Come out with a Bucky shirt.
His nickname is the African Savage, which I will file that under nicknames that you can give yourself and nobody else can give you.
Yeah. That's I'm not touching that one. That's a good point. This is I understand why you could switch sides by tomorrow, because it's really hard to trust either guys. You got one guy who just doesn't seem to develop and one guy who just is not that good. Roberson, he's a southpaw he's a good athlete. He has these really big credentials in striking, but he isn't as good of a striker as that you would expect him to be. I mean, he got smoked on the feet by Brandon Allen. He got smoked on the feet by Cleo Roundtree. And those are back-to-back fights that he got beat. Now, I know Brandon Allen submitted him, but he was beating him up on the feet first. Roberson does have good footwork. He moves well. He's got quick hands. He likes to counter strike, does a lot of parrying punches, which, I like parrying of punches. I'd say above average power. His kicks are probably the best part of his striking game. Good calf kicks, fast high kick. I'm glad that you jumped on his grappling. I agree with that. I think he's an underrated grappler. His escapes that he did against Marvin Vettori was like one of the most fun in history, when he was running up the cage and everything to try to get out of submission. He has 4 submission wins himself. He did get subbed by Allen and Vettori in back-to-back fights, but as you mentioned, those are really good grapplers. Cardio has always been a little bit of an issue. He has faded late, which I don't like. In Nzechukwu, he's just weird. Like I don't have really good grasp on him. There's actually 2 fighters I'm going to say that about on tonight's card. Sometimes Nzechukwu has really good volume, marches down his opponent, and then other times he's just like a gun-shy guy. I mean, he was gun-shy against Nick Negromonte, who is bottom of the barrel UFC, like one of the least threatening, dangerous guys in the division. And he was refused to match his volume. Now, Nzechukwu has a long jab. He likes to follow it up to get in the pocket, kind of use his size. You look at him. I mean, as you said, his name is the African Savage, and he's this massive guy who he fights at light heavyweight, but looks like he should fight at like super heavyweight. I mean, he's all bricked up, but he doesn't have the power you expect him to do, and that's just from a lack of technique. He keeps his chin high in the air. He pulls his punches. He pillars, not parries. He pillars his shots. He eats a lot of shots. He does throw some good front kicks, which I like, and I like his step and knees. He's a big, strong guy, so he's strong in the clinch. Can land some knees when he's just kind of wearing on his opponent. He likes to wrestle, but isn't a strong wrestler. But if he gets on top, he has good control because he's just so big. Good ground and pound. He's not a submission threat. He isn't a strong defensive wrestler, and that's because he doesn't have a background in wrestling. But he can get back up. He has like that Derek Lewis thing going with him, where he's just like really big. Like how could I possibly hold this guy down? He does have pretty good cardio. I like that, but I'm worried about his chin. I mean, he got knocked out by Dong Jung. Like that guy checked his chin, which is not a good sign. Man, I feel like I'm delaying because I'm not sure who I want to pick. This is a really tough pick. I'm not high on either, but I think we're going to agree again. I'm going to go with Roberson. He is the faster fighter. I can see him like banking the first 2 rounds and then trying to hold on the victory in the third and losing that round, but surviving. So give me Roberson by decision in a really close fight.
There you go. Some tepid agreement that Karl Roberson probably saves his job with a win at UFC Vegas 58. Next up at UFC Vegas 58 are middleweights as Cody Brundage takes on Tresean Gore. Brundage, the 28-year-old Michigan native, is 7-2 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He showed up on the 3rd season, actually got knocked out by William Knight, made it to the UFC a couple of years later, where he lost his debut to Nick Maximov. That was last September, and then came back with a first-round guillotine choke submission of Dalcha Lungiambula back in March. He will be taking on Gore, the 28-year-old South Carolina native fighting out of Atlanta, is 3-1 in his brief mixed martial arts career. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as intended to be a finalist of the 29th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was forced out of the actual finale with an injury, came back, and they basically reenacted the finale as he lost a unanimous decision to Brian Battle at UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Strickland back in February. This one, another dead even pick'em. Both these gentlemen are available at -110 right now. It's worth noting that Gore was supposed to be facing Josh Fremd on this card. Fremd was forced out for, I don't remember why, but that was about mid-May, and Brundage stepped in. So Brundage is fighting here on about 6 or 7 weeks notice. Not exactly short notice, but, you know, it might be a slightly truncated camp for him. I look at these two guys, and I see a lot of commonalities in their like physical tools and their skill sets. Both these guys are huge middleweights. And I don't mean huge in the sense of like Alex Pereira, where it's like a 6'4" dude with a 70-some inch wingspan. They're both only about 6 feet tall, but they have just a ton of muscle on their frames. They are bricked up middleweights. Both good wrestlers. Brundage, obviously, like a more credentialed wrestler in the amateur sense. Both hard hitting but unrefined strikers. I see a clash of pretty similar fighters here. So between the two, what it almost comes down to for me, or what it does come down to for me, is the more experienced fighter and the one that has demonstrated better cardio to me. And to me, in both cases, that's Brundage. I see this being probably a wild back and forth fight. I'm interested to see which of these guys wants it on the ground versus which really wants to just test his luck standing. My guess will be that Brundage will be the first one to kind of blink and try to shoot a takedown here. We'll learn a lot from whether he gets it or not, or whether he keeps having to try and has better luck going on later in the fight. But I expect that there will be some fun exchanges on the feet. Brundage will probably be the first one to start trying to bring the fight to the ground. He may not have success in the beginning. Like, Gore is incredibly powerful, fast feet, fast hips. But I suspect that Gore's going to start to wear down. What I've seen from him in all of his fights, and I mean, again, he only has 4 professional fights and like 2 in the Tough House, but all of them that have gone past the first round, he's starting to look tired. He has a fight style that really just seems to expend a lot of energy, whether he's striking or wrestling. So give me Brundage to kind of pull away in the second and third round here and pick up a decision in a fun fight that, I mean, it's a wide open middleweight division. One of these guys is going to get a pretty serious move up here after a win. But for me, make it Brundage.
All right. Yeah, this is an intriguing fight. I can understand how it would be hard to pick a winner, being that Gore is such an unknown because of his lack of fights, and Brundage, it's a athleticism question marks about him. Gore is physically gifted, though, as you mentioned. Like, he's a big, strong guy. He's a good striker that fights out of both stances. He's elusive, pretty defensively sound, hard to hit. He's accurate, quick jab. I'd say plus power. Kicks are a big part of his game. Hard body kicks, calf kicks. He sometimes throws him naked without setting up. He will wrestle. I think Brundage has the advantage in that sense, but he had some really good slick back takes on his time with Tough. Though he's not a submission threat. A lot of people liked him coming off the top. I mean, he was like the trendy pick to win the season, even though he didn't win the season. There's a lot of things to like about him. Brundage on the feet is I think he's a very limited boxer. He throws a lot of ugly strikes. I mentioned this before. He throws out like lead uppercut, which I hate. But he has some raw power. I mean, you mentioned it, like how he's built. He tends to load up and telegraph a little bit, but he is I'd say he's a pretty good athlete. He does throw a lot of kicks. Like, that's why I kind of give it to him. He throws a lot of question mark kicks, which is always fun to see. Throws kicks to the body, kicks, quick kick to the head. He is a former NCAA wrestler, but I'm not sold on his wrestling. I really am. He will shoot and he'll get some takedowns, but I've also seen him sprawled out on, and he doesn't really cut angles. He kind of stays underneath and gets hit from on bottom. Even going back to like the Dolce Lingambula fight, where he's got a leg and he's just eating nonstop shots as he's just holding on to a leg. If he does get on top, though, he has a strong top game. He's also hard to take down, though. The Nick Maximoff, like, he easily wrestled Brundage. I'll wrestle him, though I don't think Gore would do that. I like I like Gore here. I think he's too fast for Brundage. I think he picks apart from range. I think Brundage struggles to get Gore down and eat some shots for going for the takedowns. I agree with you, though, that the deeper the fight goes, the more it might kind of swing to Brundage. And you said, the second and third round could kind of be Brundage. I'm with you on that. I really do think the second, third round can be Brundage. I just don't think we get into a second, third round. I'm taking Gore to starch him. Give me Gore by first round TKO.
There we go. Some additional disagreement on the undercard of UFC on ESPN 39. And if I get all of these right, he's not going to be there on the recap to defend himself. It's going to be a party. Next up is a women's flyweight matchup between Antonina Shevchenko and Cortney Casey. Shevchenko, the 37-year-old older sister of flyweight champ Valentina Shevchenko, is 9-4 overall. She's 3-4 in the UFC since joining out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series. She's on a 2-fight losing streak, though in fairness to her, those losses have come against Andrea Lee, a borderline top 10 fighter, and possibly the division's brightest prospect in Casey O'Neill. Unfortunately for her, both of those were second-round stoppages. The most recent, the O'Neill fight, was last October at UFC Fight Night Santos versus Walker. She will try to right the ship against Casey. The 35-year-old fighting out of Phoenix, Arizona, is 10-9 overall. She is 6-8 in the UFC, though, I mean, in her defense, most of that was at strawweight. She isn't even 2-2 since moving up to flyweight, with wins over Mara Romero Barella and Liana Jojua, sandwiched around losses to Jillian Robertson and JJ Aldrich. Odds on this one do favor Shevchenko. She is -180. Casey around +150 or +155. Keith, between segments, you said you had a pretty confident pick for this one. Because of that, I'm throwing this one straight to you first because, I sure don't. Tell me
I
what
was
you
just
got.
talking out of my ass. Just talking out of my ass. So Shevchenko came in from the Contender Series, and obviously when you have the last name Shevchenko, you got to get more attention when I'm doing a preview. And her rise to the regional scene, I loved what I saw from her. Her striking was completely off the charts. Looked like one of the best strikers that's going to enter the UFC. I mean, she walks down her foe. She's great in all ranges. She's accurate. She's fast. One of the best jabs in the game. She throws these power strikes right down the pipe, clean, straight shots. Likes to throw a lot of combinations, which are really nice. Really good kicking game. Kicks to all areas of the body. She gets in the clinch. She's good in there. Has a lot. Obviously, she comes from a kickboxing background, Muay Thai background. She has a lot of experience in there. Landing knees and elbow and sides. And then there's that other aspect of MMA that kind of got overlooked because she had this judo background, so you expect her to be pretty good. I mean, you think about what Kayla Harrison's doing in the PFL right now, and Ronda Rousey, and I know she's not that level of judo, but you get my point. Judo's those people who having ground game, and she must went to Alan Badeau's judo school because she is terrible on the ground. She can't get off the bottom to save her life. I mean, she made Andrea Lee look like Sarah Hildebrand with the wrestling. So yeah, that's obviously worrisome. Then you bring in Cortney Casey. Now, Cortney Casey, it's funny that my notes for Cortney Casey, a former strawweight, now that flyweight, is that she's big for the weight class. She doesn't look small for someone who's moved up. She looks big. She is a striker, high volume, constantly throwing combinations, decent power, a lot of kicks. She likes teep kicks, but she's also terrible wrestling. One of the worst get-up games in the UFC. To her credit, she'll toss up some submissions off her back. She's more of a threat on her back than Shevchenko is. And she did catch a submission on Mara Romero Barella, but there's been so many fights with Cortney Casey just on the back and just losing fights. This fight is ugly. Cortney Casey was the only person with worse wrestling than Antonina Shevchenko. So that, and I don't think if she's smart, she's going to try to turn this into a wrestling match. I just think they're going to leave this too much on the feet, and they're both going to battle. And I think it's really dumb to swing it out with Antonina Shevchenko. When we've seen people swing it out, Caitlin Chikagian swung it out with Antonina Antonina Shevchenko briefly and was getting starched up. Antonina has too many weapons. I think she sparks Cortney Casey when Cortney makes a mistake of standing. Like, give me Antonina Shevchenko by second round TKO.
Okay, good. So you saw that, Cortney Casey is about as favorable a style matchup as you could get for Antonina Shevchenko. You pointed out that, I mean, she is not small for flyweight. She was big for strawweight, which made it look even more ridiculous to get ragdolled all over the place by tiny Michelle Watterson.
I knew
like that was, I mean,
I
not that I was ever.
That. You love saying that when we talk about Courtney Casey. You always bring that up.
I always bring it up because I mean, it's not like I was ever like
I get it.
I was never in the locomotive like pulling the burp. But if I was ever on the Courtney Casey train at all, I jumped off it at that fight. I mean, yeah. Shevchenko probably could put Casey on the ground if she wanted to. I don't, but I'm with you. I don't think either of them is going to want to. I don't know if we get a finish here. Casey, if nothing else, has been kind of durable and persistent. But I do see her just being outclassed on the feet. Give me Shevchenko by a pretty lopsided, 3-round decision here where she busts Casey up pretty good. And in so doing, probably saves her own job. I mean, being Val's big sister only carries you so long, and maybe puts an end to the Courtney Casey experiment here in the UFC, because I mentioned the Casey's 2-2 at flyweight, but both of the women she's beat are out of the UFC. Like Mara Romero Barella and Liana Jojua just weren't UFC material. Maybe this will be the Saturday that we learn or decide that neither was Courtney Casey. Next up, we have a bantamweight matchup between Aiemann Zahabi and Ricky Turcios. Zahabi, the 34-year-old Quebecois, is 8-2 overall. He is 2-2 in the UFC. He won his last time out, a first-round knockout of Draco Rodriguez last February at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Lewis. That snapped a 2-fight losing streak for him over against Vince Morales and Ricardo Ramos. And if none of this is ringing a bell, it's because he fights once every 2 years. Him coming back in just a year is actually kind of a quick turnaround for him. He's going to look to keep things going against Turcios. The 29-year-old Houstonian is 11-2 overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC and minting himself the bantamweight winner of the 29th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He did that with a split decision victory over Brady Houston last August at UFC on ESPN, Barboza versus Chikadze. Turcios is a moderate favorite here. He's minus 175. Zahabi plus 150 on the comeback. Keith, obviously, we just finished talking about Antonina Shevchenko. In the same sense, Aiemann Zahabi is primarily famous, of course, for being the younger brother of TriStar Gym head honcho Firas Zahabi. Interestingly, for the younger brother and presumably the pupil of Firas Zahabi, Aiemann Zahabi kind of fights against the TriStar like stereotypical style. When the average fan that's been a fan for more than 5 or 6 years hears TriStar, they're like, oh man, they're that gym that just turned people like George St. Pierre and Rory McDonald into these like boring jab machines. Aiemann Zahabi's kind of a wild man. Like there's a lot of kill or be killed out there. I mean, he's not Charles Jourdain, or who's the cat that just got another knockout at Bellator? Mandel Nallo. Okay. He's not Mandel Nallo, but his fights tend to be a little more exciting than you would expect from a TriStar guy, because he's willing to test his luck out on the feet. He's got good power, and he's also susceptible to power. Very famously, he got spinning back elbowed by Ricardo Ramos back at UFC 217. Must have been one hell of a night for Firas Zahabi, seeing his brother just get flatlined and then ending the night with George St. Pierre choking out Michael Bisping to become a 2-division champ. Must have been the whole roller coaster of human emotions for Firas Zahabi that night. Turcios, I mean, I got a sentimental place for Turcios. Not only is he a Houston guy, he's a Houston guy I've seen and interviewed a bunch of times. If you followed Tough or the post-Tough things at all, you can see that he's just got personality for days. He's just kind of an endlessly cheerful oddball. Like, the best way I can describe him is like a really, really happy Diego Sanchez. Like, he'll go off on weird tangents and he's kind of an oddball dude, but Sanchez would always try to be menacing and call himself the nightmare in the middle of the weirdness. Ricky Turcios is just super, super happy. He's a tall, lanky guy for the division that he puts his physical tools to good use offensively. He's really tricky on the ground, fast transitions, good back takes, good chokes. He puts his long limbs to good use for that. On the feet, he uses his reach well offensively, but and this is the thing that even though I think he has a ton of upside, will always make me nervous about picking Turcios as a favorite. He's hittable on the feet, and his chin is good and not great. I was cage side when he got lamped by Aiemann Martinez here in Houston. In all of his fights in Tough and on the finale, he got caught clean a couple of times. And that makes me concerned about this fight because Zahabi hits hard, and he does have all the weapons offensively. Turcios could invite a fight that is wild to his own detriment and get caught with something here. But with Zahabi taking a year or 2 years between every fight, I can't see him getting better. He's now 34 in a division that's not that kind to the elderly. So even though I recognize that Turcios could run right into a punch or a high kick, I think that's the outside chance. Give me Turcios to win a decision here in a really fun fight. And I wouldn't be that surprised if Turcios finds a finish somewhere himself. He's more than capable of tapping someone out on the ground like Zahabi, or he could start, really rolling on him, land a bunch of volume on the feet, and just kind of kill him with an accumulation of damage. But give me Turcios by decision.
Yeah. This is intriguing. Turcios was a guy that I liked coming off the Ultimate Fighter show. I think he had a really good showing. Obviously, he won it, but he's a very unorthodox striker. He switches stances a lot. He has high output. I like that he kind of holds his ground when his opponent tries pressing him back. It's a very Alex Volkanovski trait to him. He freezes opponents with all of his everything that he's doing, kind of confuses them. He does a lot of up and down feints. He's quick. His check right hook from the southpaw stance is his best strike. I like that he attacks with combinations. His plan is just trying to force you on your back foot. I like that he'll throw kicks in his combinations. He does. You mentioned he does want to brawl. He'll sit down in the pocket. He showed you talked about him getting clipped a lot, but he also showed how tough he is. Like the Dan Argueta fight, the fight where he was getting clipped up and kept moving forward to land his own shots. He's a good wrestler, decent entries. He'll often reach though, he kind of overextend. His defense wrestling does need improvement. He was taken down in multiple fights on the Ultimate Fighter show. He has a submission thrown off his back. He's very active at tossing up submission attacks too. He's just active, just moving. He's not going to stay down there and let you pit him against the canvas. I also like his sub game. I like that he uses his sub game to create space to get up too. He'll attack a submission and then use that to get up. But the best trait of his game is his cardio. Cardio really is a tool. He's going to fight at a high output. He's going to kind of break you with that. As you mentioned by Zahabi, it's so hard to get a grasp on him because you mentioned he's fought one time in 3 years. He looked really good in that one time, but again, I kind of forget about the guy. He is a boxer that he tends to fight in spurts. He has a crisp jab. He follows up with straight punches down the pipe. He showed off some power against Draco Rodriguez. The one thing I might disagree on, he's got power and he follow-up shots, but he can be gun shy, which is a TriStar kind of attribute. He has times where he does a lack of output. He keeps his he's not as technically sound as most guys are from TriStar. He keeps his head a little high. He lacks head movements, but he has good kicks. He doesn't throw them enough, and I think that's kind of a trait of his. He is open to leg kicks. I think he's underrated in the clinch. He gets in there. Muay Thai lands a lot of close quarter striking, dirty
physically
boxing.
Strong dude in there.
Okay, yeah. He's definitely stronger than Turcos, that's for sure. Turcios, yeah. He will wrestle, but he doesn't really have a wrestling background. I think he's a weak defensive wrestler, but he is good at keeping a scramble going. Kind of has a little bit of a Tim Elliott thing going, and getting it back to his feet. But he comes from TriStar, which is always submission threats. Again, it's hard to get a handle on Zahabi because he's so inactive. My issue with him is the lack of volume compared to Turcios, who's going to be on the gas pedal the entire fight. I think he forces Zahabi on his back foot for most of the fight, puts Zahabi in a position where he doesn't really feel comfortable, not driving the car, being driven around. So I think Turcios sneaks in a couple of takedowns too. Give me Turcios to win a decision just based on his high output and volume.
Well, so far at UFC on ESPN 39, we have had Valentina Shevchenko's not as good sister. We've had Firas Zahabi's not as skilled brother. And now we have Amanda Nunes' not as good wife as Nina Nunes tries.
We found the theme of the card, my man.
I'm so sorry. That's the theme of the card.
You forgot Drakkar Klose's not as talented, significant other. Was that an insult? I wasn't trying to insult. I thought that was just true, right? Like that. Cody Casey's at the power couple. It's Drakkar Klose is the
Yeah, there you go. Drakkar Klose is not as good. Significant
wait
other.
A minute though. The Brundage Bobby Cooper though. Do we have the more talented one?
Well, Amanda Bobby Brundage, I think, is retired. She hasn't fought since 2019 at this point. Yeah. So yeah. So hey, we got one power side of the power couple on this whole card, but Nina Nunes facing off against Cynthia Calvillo in what I'm going to preemptively call a cut list special. Calvillo, the 34-year-old Californian, is 9-4-1 overall. She is 6-4-1 in the UFC, which sounds great until you realize that most of that was at strawweight, and she is in fact 1-3 since moving up to the flyweight division. She won her debut at flyweight in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 10 back in almost exactly 2 years ago. Since then, beating Jessica Ai, by the way. Since then, she is 0-3, having lost to Caitlin Chikagian, Jessica Andrade, and Andrea Lee. The most recent of those, the Lee fight, she got basically busted up into her corner, stopping the fight between rounds. That was at UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Rodriguez last November. She'll be taking on Nunes, the 36-year-old former Nina Ansaroff, 10-7 overall, and even 4-4 in the UFC, but she is on a 2-fight losing streak as well, those being against Tatiana Suarez, which was a unanimous decision loss all the way back in 2019. You didn't need me to tell you that it was a long time ago because it was Tatiana Suarez. Then more recently, last April, got armbarred by Mackenzie Dern in the closing seconds of the first round back at UFC on ABC, Vettori versus Holland. Calvillo, despite her miserable run of late, moderate favorite. She's -155. Nunes +135 on the comeback. Keith, I mean, I was mildly surprised that Nina Nunes was still fighting, honestly. Considering how much open speculation there is about Amanda Nunes, how much longer does she have for this sport when she's just going to go do the family thing? And she's one of the top pound for pound fighters in the sport. For Nina, who is the one who actually bore the child and is a marginal UFC level talent, when she just pops up once every 18 months or so, I'm always mildly surprised that she's still in it. And she got absolutely run over by Mackenzie Dern in her last appearance. I'm surprised to see Nina Nunes back. And honestly, I'm surprised to see the odds this close against Cynthia Calvillo. Cynthia Calvillo has not looked good at flyweight, but she's not looked good against good fighters. I mean, she beat Jessica Ai, which in hindsight might have been the worst thing for her because we didn't realize at the time how badly Jessica Ai was declining.
Yeah, in a main event, by the way.
In the main event. So, because Calvillo had been kind of ordained, she's going to be a contender at strawweight one day. As soon as she hit a ceiling there, she moved up to flyweight. She beats a top 10 fighter at the time in Jessica Ai, and everyone's like, great. Cynthia Calvillo, we can get her into the title picture. And instead, she came up short against Chikagian and Andrade, both of whom were, top 5 fighters at the time, if not top 3. And then her bounce back fight after those back-to-back losses, Andrea Lee, who, again, she's hit a ceiling, but her ceiling is around the 10-12 mark. Like, she's not a bad fighter. I think Calvillo even though I've kind of given up on Calvillo as a contender, I've not given up on Calvillo as someone who could hang around the UFC, and I kind of have Nina Nunes. I've got Calvillo in this one. I expect that Calvillo will be able to handle her on the feet or on the ground. Give me Calvillo by decision, and I wouldn't be surprised if Calvillo actually turns to try to start taking this fight to the ground rather than just slug it out on the feet.
Yeah. The biggest surprise I have is that we forgot about the less popular cousin, Saeed Nurmagomedov. No, actually, isn't he the one who's not related?
Like he's the one that's not closely related. They tried to call him cousins,
but they're not really. Like there's no. It's like Nurmagomedov would be like having the name Jackson or Brown in America or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that shows you how much I want to talk about this fight. Calvillo, yeah, like I think you described her well. Like she's just an okay fighter everywhere. Like nothing special about her. She's a boxer that can fight out of both stances. She has decent head movement. She has good volume, but she lacks power. She throws a lot of kicks. She is an okay wrestler. I think her wrestling's a little overrated. She's got good entries, and she has a basic understanding. She's explosive. She can get to the second level on the hips. She can cut the corner and chain wrestle, but sometimes she shoots without any setup. Sometimes she gets stuck underneath there. Sometimes she just shoots and just easily gets blocked without even getting close to the hips. She does have a good grappling game. She has some slick back takes, some good ground and pound. But overall, I'm pretty. I feel like almost like a bust compared to what people thought she was going to be. Nina Nunes is such an inactive fighter. She's fought one time in 3 years. Plus, she looks really bad in her last two fights. Again, Nina Nunes took on Mackenzie Dern, and before that was Tatiana Suarez. So like that's a hell of a oh, you're leaving for a little while to have a baby? Okay, let's get you beat up by Tatiana Suarez. Oh, you came back? Okay, let's give you Mackenzie Dern. Yeah, that's tough. What I don't have that many notes on Nina Nunes because she's been so inactive, but pretty fast hands. She likes to brawl. She lacks power though because it's all like arm punches. She backs straight up on the center line, throws some naked leg kicks, but she does have a lot of kicks. Offensive wrestling is not really there. She can like grind in the clinch, but overall she's not a strong threat to get a takedown, and she's a weak defensive wrestler. But again, I do want to put a little bit past my Claudia Gadelia. She beat, which was a good fighter. I mean, this is like 2018 when she beat Claudia Gadelia, but getting takedown by Tatiana Suarez really means nothing to me. That's everyone gets takedown by her. And then Mackenzie Dern is such a wizard on the ground. I really have no clue who wins. I'm taking Calvillo simply because she has been more active. But like it would not surprise me if Nina Nunes beats her because of how like mediocre Calvillo is. I'm not the best technical breakdown for me. Like I get this one, just one of those fights that I wasn't that interested in, so I didn't spend as much time as I did on some of the other fights. But give me Calvillo to find a way to get the fight to the ground in at least two out of the 3 rounds. So I'll take Calvillo by decision.
There you go. 2 lukewarm picks for Cynthia Calvillo to win by decision over Nina Nunes. We head now to the lightweight division for a matchup between Michael Johnson and Jamie Mullarkey. Johnson, the 36-year-old St. Louis native fighting out of South Florida, is 20-17 overall. He is 12-13 since joining the UFC out of the 12th season of The Ultimate Fighter. That 12-13 mark includes a 2-2 run at featherweight. He is 10-11 in the lightweight division. He did win his last time out, knocked out Alan Patrick in the second round at UFC on ESPN, Blachowicz versus Rakic back in May. That snapped a 4-fight losing streak for Johnson. That was half at featherweight, half at lightweight, but he finally did get back on track, looked sensational against Patrick. He's going to try to keep that momentum going against Mullarkey, the 27-year-old Australian who is 14-5 overall, 2-3 in the UFC. He did lose his last time out. That was a second-round TKO loss to Jalen Turner at UFC 272 back in March. That snapped a 2-fight win streak for him over Kamaworthy and Devontae Smith. Odds here, Mullarkey, pretty strong favorite. He's minus 195, so almost a 2-1 favorite. Johnson plus 160 on the comeback. Keith, Michael Johnson, one of the more difficult fighters in the UFC to predict his fights is what I say I feel confident in. You know, this is his 22nd UFC fight.
Yeah.
Fair to say we don't know what we're getting. In light of that, you still have to pick a winner. Who you got and how?
Yeah, Michael Johnson, the ultimate like head scratcher. Every time you give up on him, he does something spectacular. We joked about it off the air. Like he has, if you were around, I don't know, what would you say, 2003-ish, 2002 Sherdog going in the forums, a very common thing would have been old Vitor, which meant a really good Vitor Belfort, and then all of a sudden he'd go through just periods where he just wouldn't show up. Like, and then when everyone gave up on him, he would starch someone in like only a way Vitor Belfort could, and then everyone get excited. Like, I kind of feel like Michael Johnson's like the poor man's version of that. Like, yeah, he's never winning UFC titles like Vitor Belfort was, but he has flashes. I mean, he's a southpaw with, we talked about this before, like really deceivingly long frame. He's a boxer with fast hands. He throws clean, straight shots down the pipe. He will go down to the body. He has good power. We kind of, I shouldn't say we, but I started doubting his power a little bit, and then he showed in his last fight it's still there. His wrestling is underrated, but he never, ever, ever, ever uses his wrestling. He has very good takedown defense. He hasn't been taken down that much, except when he goes against a Khabib Nurmagomedov, which everyone does that. He has 9 submission losses, which is every time he gets submitted, it doesn't seem like, oh, wow, this guy's so much a better grappler than him. It's more like, oh, Michael Johnson had a moment, like lapse of poor fight IQ and got caught. Jamie Mullarkey is like, I asked you, so you know who I'm picking because we talked off air before we recorded, and I said, who am I picking? We just sort of, we never do that. Like I never knew who Ben's taking. Like I dare, I take guesses, and I kind of know we know each other at this point, what we look for each other.
But we don't compare notes.
No, we don't compare notes. I don't know who you're taking. If you throw a big upset, that sometimes I'm surprised. Mullarkey's my kind of guy. Like you just know the kind of guy. Like he's unathletic fighter who just makes up with volume and toughness. If I say that about a person, I usually like him. Actually, it's kind of weird. It depends how if I say that gritty, that kind of means more I was saying like, oh, they're not that talented. They're just trying to be nice. But a guy that just used volume as a tool, who like a Darren Elkins type, a Jamie Mullarkey type, he isn't fast, but he just stays in his opponent's face. I said this before. He broke Devontae Smith with just his volume. Devontae Smith is way more talented than Jamie Mullarkey is. He gave Brad Riddell a hell of a fight. I thought he beat Ziam for Ziam. How do I say his name?
Yeah,
Ziam.
that was perfect.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. It just seems like just those names just don't roll off my tongue well. I thought he won that fight. But his limited athleticism and his lack of defensive skill will get him in trouble at times against a physical freak like he just did against Jalen Turner. But if he can get inside, he rips the body. He has surprising power. Has that like almost like Davy Grant power, where like you look at his frame and you don't think so. Then he gets inside and you're like, oh wow, like he's hurting guys. I mean, he hurt Brad Riddell. I mean, he starts Kamaworthy, Devontae Smith. He likes to work inside, get a takedown. He chains takedown attacks together well. A lot of it comes down to just like this unbreakable mindset that like I need to work constantly. I need to get in there, and he just like won't give up the willpower to get a takedown. He has showed some improved control. If he's taken down, he does like he's smart enough to just pop right back up, continue working. You can't break this guy's will, and he has the cardio to go hard for all 15 minutes. Michael Johnson is light years ahead of Jamie Mullarkey in skill. He could easily, if this fight ends in 1 minute, Michael Johnson starts him in 1 minute. Then we go. Then he's got 2 back-to-back knockout fights, and then we're calling him to fight huge name guys. We're all excited about him. I'm leading a parade for Michael Johnson. It'd be crazy, but I just don't think it happens. I think Mullarkey stays in Johnson's face, just kills him with volume, mentally starts breaking Johnson. I could see Mullarkey get hurt in the first round, but that doesn't stop Mullarkey, who just continues on the gas, who wins the last two. Give me Mullarkey by decision.
I pick up everything you're putting down there, and it all makes sense. Just in my mind, I'm just checking off the box. Yep, that's right. Yep. And we talked a little bit, just a few seconds before we started recording, about how Michael Johnson, he's got the old Vitor thing, the young lion, the old dinosaur. I think I have that backwards. You know what I mean? Where he'll just do something periodically to remind you what he is capable of. And it's just to torture you and make you question all of your life choices in following this sport. The fight against Alan Patrick was another of those moments, because yes, it's 38-year-old Patrick, who had been on kind of a losing streak anyway, but all of a sudden,
is Michael Johnson the Will Smith's dad in The Fresh Prince? Like,
yeah.
shows up with a gift of Will like every 5 years.
Yeah.
And then Michael Johnson disappoints us, and we're all screaming like, "Why doesn't he love me?" or whatever he said. Why does Michael Johnson want us?
He's not an abusive parent. He's just a neglectful one. Yeah. He's the one that, like, for 5 years in a row, he just sends you the birthday card with like 2 $1 bills in it, and then every 5 years he shows up, with like a new bike. Yeah, that's Michael Johnson.
That's Michael Johnson.
And the Alan Patrick fight in May was the shiny new bike moment, because it was Alan Patrick, so consider the opponent, but the bad Michael Johnson habits were gone. He was not gun shy. He showed off, just even at 36, just some of the crispest, fastest hands, and just one of the soundest defensive boxers in the division. Like, he overwhelmed Patrick from the go. And if I could have a guarantee that that's the Michael Johnson that shows up, I got Michael Johnson by first round knockout. Yes. Like, Mullarkey is just, his style will get him into trouble against that much more nifty a boxer. I won't give you the whole career retrospective on Michael Johnson, because if you're watching the show and you've been watching it any amount of time, I've laid it out there. For a guy who's below 500 in the UFC, if I ask you the question, who has beaten Dustin Poirier the worst? Charles the Bronx isn't even in the conversation. It's either Conor McGregor or Michael Johnson, and I lean towards Johnson. He is breathtaking.
Doesn't Conor, sorry to interrupt you, doesn't Conor like lose that credit after losing the next two to him?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, not to mention what Poirier would do to Johnson if they fought now, but I want to say,
you don't know. Not if good Johnson shows up.
Yeah.
If
don't do that
shiny bicycle Michael Johnson shows up.
He is capable of just breathtaking offensive work, and he still is, even at this point. Just barely 2 years ago, he busted up Thiago Moises, then managed to fall into like a heel hook or something like 10 seconds into the second round. All that said, I'm gonna make the slight upset pick here and say that Johnson, this stage in his career, knows he has a limited number of paychecks left, knows that he was on the cusp of losing his job in the Alan Patrick fight. And that's what really makes me think that him showing up in May was not just the random die roll, like the random coin flip, but him saying, okay, I'm on a 4-fight losing streak. I am legit going to be cut if I lose to Alan Patrick. I'm saying he carries that same mindset into this fight. And we once again just see flashes of what a dynamite offensive fighter he is, because if the right Michael Johnson shows up, Jamie Mullarkey is actually tailor-made for him. As a slower, not very defensively sound striker who wants to and needs to come forward. So give me Michael Johnson by first round TKO here to finally even his record back up at 500 in the UFC, 10 plus years after breaking into the organization in the first place. Next up on the main card of UFC on ESPN 39, we have the obligatory unranked heavyweight slobber knocker, but even by those standards, even by the standards of the UFC's required main card meaningless heavyweight fight, this one on paper makes the Josh Parisian versus Alan Baudot fight from 2 weeks ago look like Couture versus Hizzo.
Oh, no.
It is Jared Vanderaa versus Chase Sherman. And
if we had a tag team match, if we had those two guys fighting, we had Team Vanderaa Sherman taking on Team Baudot and Parisian. You're taking, I don't know. I think I'm taking Vanderaa and Sherman.
Dude, now I want to see it. I'll say that.
That's that's the next season of the Ultimate Fighter. Like another, it's like season 4 of the Ultimate Fighter, the comeback, but instead we just give terrible heavyweights.
I'm here for it.
I'd rather Castro's in there and Roque Martinez and
dude, Jorgen de Castro could be one of the coaches compared to some of these fights.
Hey, he did just beat Junior Dos Santos by having the great skill of eating a punch and then Dos Santos' shoulder just exploding.
I'm sure he trained that.
That's right. All right. The guy, you know who needs to be on the show? The guy who pulled the mask off.
Justin McCulley.
Yeah, Justin McCulley. No one really acted like, who the hell's that? Here's the big surprise. The guy takes off his mask. Like,
is Justin McCulley wearing what looked like a beekeeper mask?
What the hell? Yeah, he takes off one mask and then there's like another mask. He's gonna take it off again.
I mean, it takes a lot for Scott Coker to look embarrassed of himself, but he looked like he wanted to be somewhere else when that was happening.
Yeah.
See how badly we want to talk about this fight?
Throw Murray's screen in there. Throw Murray's screen in there. Throw in. Sure. You ever like sit around your friends and just throw out like random like running backs from like the early 90s or something? Like that's what we're doing right now. Just throwing out random heavyweights. Just.
Oh yeah. Got Marion Butts versus Barry Word.
Throw Gan McGee in there. We will throw in the incredible Bulk Travis View.
Oh yeah. Where's Wes Sims?
Greg Rebello.
I bet he's free.
Greg Rebello in there, yeah. Or Wes Sims. Oh,
yeah.
He's probably on a bridge or something.
Yeah. All right, Jared Vanderaa, the 30-year-old Californian, is 12-8 overall. He is 1-4 in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. In his defense, they've come against good fighters in Alexander Romanov, Andrei Arlovsky, and Alexei Oleinik. The most recent of those, the Oleinik loss, was to a scarf hold. It was in the first round at UFC 273. He will be taking on Sherman. The 32-year-old Mississippi native is 15-10 overall. He is 3-9 across 2 separate stints with the UFC. He is 1-4 in this current run with the UFC. He won his return fight against noted light heavyweight Ike Villanueva. Since then, he's lost 4 straight to Andrei Arlovsky, Parker Porter, Jake Collier, and Alexander Romanov. The most recent of those, the Romanov loss, he did step in on short notice and got key locked in about 2 minutes. Odds favor Vanderaa. He's minus 180, Sherman plus 155 on the comeback. I said in one of our previews for another Vanderaa fight, I don't remember which, I've probably said it multiple times, I still don't know what Jared Vanderaa does at a UFC level aside from be huge. Like, he is a legit 6'4", 6'5" guy who cuts weight to make 265. And it's not because he's fat. It's just because even in reasonable shape, he looks like probably a 280-pound guy. He is huge. And for as huge as he is, he's actually not that bad an athlete. He's not as slow on the feet. His hands are not as slow as you would expect of a guy his size. He's not as good of a wrestler as you'd think he could be, considering his size, but he has decent defensive wrestling just by being huge. Not enough to, keep Alexander Romanov off him, and he has okay power, but he doesn't have as much power as you would think of. Again, 6'4", 280-pound guy. He's just, I say well-rounded, but he's like, if you create a fighter, he's like a 5 in every category by heavyweight standards. However, for me, that's easily enough to beat Sherman. I have not fallen into the Sherman trap for a long time now. Sherman is what a casual fan or a non-fan would expect a good heavyweight to look like.
I got to jump in, man. Your delivery on that was incredible. Like, you're bashing this guy, telling all this shit, and go, that's still better to beat Chase Sherman. Your delivery was money. Nice job.
Thank you, sir. I mean, Sherman is what a casual fan or a non-fan would picture a very good heavyweight looking like. He's a 6'4" guy, 250 pounds, not fat. I mean, at 245, he's got a 6-pack. He looks like he could be like an NFL like outside linebacker or something. He's young. He's still only 32. He was in his like mid-20s first time he got to the UFC. And there's just that fallacy that you see a heavyweight that's like 25 years old. He's like big, got good natural size, not fat, like looks like an athlete. You assume, okay, even if he's not great now, he's going to be good eventually. He's been with good camps. I mean, he's been with Jackson Wink now for, I think, 3 or 4 years. It's just not happening. Like, for whatever reason, Chase Sherman just isn't a UFC level fighter. Like, minus power by heavyweight standards for sure. Poor takedown defense, and not as athletic as he looks. Like I mentioned that Jared Vanderaa is, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying he's not Curtis Blades or Surreal Gone, but he's more nimble than you would think for his size. Sherman is less nimble than you would think for his size. Like, fat Jake Collier bodied him on the ground. Just threw him around. Like, Parker Porter was quicker on the feet than Chase Sherman. And Porter, like, you know, is a thick built fella. Just Sherman's not, he's not good. Like, it's kind of surprising he hasn't been cut yet. It's just a combination probably of the same mental fallacy that I just mentioned, plus his willingness to step up on short notice multiple times. He's done everything possible to extend his own career, but short of a complete reinvention of his skills, he's just not a UFC level heavyweight. Vanderaa doesn't have great power, but he could end up landing on top here in one of your inevitable heavyweight collisions. And if he's on top, he's heavy on top and throws like solid ground and pound that's just aided by his mass. Give me Jared Vanderaa by second round TKO ground and pound.
Okay. Trey Telligman, Wesley Cabbage Correa, Mike Whitehead, Eddie Sanchez, Chase Gormley, Jack May,
Sherman Pendergast,
nice, Josh Copeland, Sean Jordan, Mike Russo. I'm just kidding. Like, I think that's way. Isn't it more interesting? We just keep naming heavyweights than me giving a technical breakdown between Chase Sherman and Jared Vanderaa. Yeah. Actually, I'm not gonna do it. I have all these notes. Like Chase Sherman, he's a boxer. All right, I'll do it. But he's a boxer that's like pretty unathletic. He has decent output, and he is a builder. He gets strong as he goes. He does a lot of feints. Throws short, tight strikes. His left hook kind of be in his big blow. That elbow he hit on Ike Villanueva, that's a pretty good one too. But he has no power. It's like all arm punches. He's a very stationary target right in front of his opponent. No lateral movement. He throws calf kicks, but he has a weak ground game. He's been taken down in 3 straight fights. Really struggles to get back up his feet. Has been quickly submitted in back-to-back fights. Then you move over to Vanderaa, slow, unathletic heavyweight, but who's very big. He's a big dude. He lumbers forward. He has good output. I do like that. Strong jab. But for a guy who's really big, he lacks power. He struggles with leg kick. Like Henan Ferreira battered his legs with kicks. He does have a solid chin. I'll give him that. He showed that against the war he had against Justin Tafa. But he works to get into the clinch where he'll just lean on people, wear them out, and then land short shots. He will look for like body lock and trip takedowns. And if he gets on top, he's just a big guy. But he has weak takedown defensive stuff, and he has some pretty bad. Actually, no, I was gonna say he had pretty bad cardio, but actually, heavyweight is not that bad. I'm taking Vanderaa. I'm with you. I say he gets inside. He works his business. I think he uses that strength advantage, lands some shots, get some takedowns. I think we're gonna get punished, and I think it's gonna be all 15 minutes. Give me Vanderaa by decision.
Keith dares to speak that into existence because he doesn't have to recap this one. So thank you very much.
I'm sorry. One thing we don't do, to our credit, and maybe we should, like, we don't pretend like every matchup is an exciting matchup. Like, I hate low level, like UFC heavyweight talent. I just don't want to break them down ever again.
I'm with you, especially guys that we've talked about. I mean, dude, this is Chase Sherman's 13th UFC fight, and your notes could be the same from the first.
I know, nothing changed.
Next up on the UFC Vegas 58 main card, and at least as the card is currently structured, this is the 4th fight from the top. 2 gentlemen, frankly, in need of a win. Middleweights, Jamie Pickett and Denis Tiuliulin. Pickett, the 33-year-old North Carolina native, is 13-7 overall. He is 2-3 since joining the UFC as a 3-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought on the first, third, and fourth seasons. Finally, after that win on the fourth season in August of 2020, he made his way to the big show where he promptly lost his first 2 fights, came back from that with 2 back-to-back wins, and lost his last time out. That was a first-round Bravo choke submission at the hands of Kyle Dawkins at UFC Fight Night Walker versus Hill back in February. You may remember that from that being the night that Dawkins insisted that we all start calling him the Darce Knight. He'll be taking on Tiuliulin. 34-year-old Russian is 9-6 with 1 no contest overall. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He debuted in March at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Dawkins. Got choked out in the second round by Aliashkab Kizriev. He will try to bounce back from that here. He is not favored to do so. He is a plus 155 underdog. Pickett minus 180 as the favorite. Keith, who you got in this one and how?
I said earlier that there's a guy that I don't have a firm grasp on, and that's Jamie Pickett. He looks good at one fight, looks terrible in another fight. I've said that about him before. One fight he has good output, some other fight he has bad output. One fight he's getting flattened by Jordan Wright. Another fight he's taking power punches for Tefon Nzechukwu and battling forward. Pickett, he's a plus athlete. He's fairly fast. Switches stances a lot. He likes being the one march forward. Doesn't really like getting pressured back. He does move away and avoid stuff pretty well, and I'd say he has decent power. I mean, he's a very built guy. You can see that, but he doesn't possess like one punch power. He doesn't have much of a kicking game. He doesn't check leg kicks. He's probably a better opportunistic grappler than he is striker. Like he can get some takedowns, so he's not a strong wrestler. He does like he finds ways to get the fight to the ground. He has good ground and pound, but he doesn't have a submission threat. He doesn't have any submission. I think it's maybe 1 submission on his record. But if he gets taken down, we saw this in his last fight. If he gets taken down, he really struggles to get back up. Now, Tiuliulin, he's a very long and lengthy fighter. He's got some pretty quick hands. He works behind a jab. He throws high volume. I like that he gets in the pocket and just throws down. Has like very like wild winging haymaker kind of style where he's trying to end the fight with one single punch every single time. He has been hurt many times in brawls, which I don't like. Being for guys recently in the UFC, he's been tagged a lot. I like his step and knees. I like that he throws hard leg kicks. He works. He likes to work the inside leg kick a lot. He has nice power. He is a good wrestler. He looks to work to a better position when he gets a takedown. Not much of a submission threat. I don't think he has it. I think like Pickett, he may have 1 sub. I don't think he has any. And he has been submitted a few times. As far as my prediction goes, I don't really know. I'm not that high on either guy. I am going to take Tiuliulin. He probably has the power advantage. He actually might have the more output, and he definitely. Well, I shouldn't say that definitely is a better wrestler, but like on paper, I think he's a better wrestler. Pickett is a really big guy, so I think people struggle to get it down. But you know what? I'm going to say he rocks Pickett. I'm going to say he lands a big shot. Give me Tiuliulin by second round TKO.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Tiuliulin in his UFC debut to upset Kizriev, and I explained at that time that it was a massive flyer. I mean, I think it's probably the biggest odds upset pick either of us has ever picked on this because, Kizriev was like minus 600 or something against him, and I just said, Tiuliulin.
Wait. Did you take Mike Jackson? And he won?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that Jackson was the underdog. Just because it was such an obvious pick for me.
Like, why would he be? Yeah.
Yeah, like, Dean Barry, what? Yeah, but even though Tiuliulin lost that fight and ended up getting choked out, I still felt pretty good about the pick. He's better than his record. He's a big guy with some physical tools, and like he's taking on a guy in Pickett that has the problems that you mentioned. Pickett is big. His last fight that lost to Kyle Dawkins, I should have mentioned, that was him turning around on short notice and fighting in like 195-pound catchweight fight. But certainly he didn't give up any size. And against another guy in Dawkins that's also habitually a 185er, if anything, he benefited more from the 10-pound like allowance. Like he looked bigger, whereas Dawkins just looked more hydrated. I'm with you. Like, Pickett is probably the more skilled fighter overall with slightly better physical tools, but he's so inconsistent that I think even as the slight underdog here, Tiuliulin, like, he should be able to catch him. Like, he's going to be the bigger fighter, at least taller and rangier. I'm picking maybe the heavier guy in the cage, and he's going to put that to good use in the kickboxing. And Pickett is opportunistic when scrambles happen, but he's not a good enough offensive wrestler to just have that as a safety valve if he's getting stuff he doesn't like from Tiuliulin on the feet. So I actually agree with you on this upset pick. Give me Denis Tiuliulin by third round TKO after just kind of frustrating and tiring Pickett out, and just getting the better things on the feet. Third from the top at UFC on ESPN 39 is a bantamweight matchup between Douglas Silva de Andrade and Said Nurmagomedov. Silva, the 37-year-old Brazilian, is 28-4 with one no contest overall. He's 6-4 in the UFC. Worth noting that he is 6-3 at bantamweight. He made his debut at featherweight against Zubaira Tukhugov, that's a fairly tall order. He did lose that fight. Since then, he's dropped down to his preferred weight class and gone 6-3. He's on a 2-fight win streak, those being a first-round knockout of Gaetano Perello last October and a second-round technical submission of Sergey Morozov at UFC 271 this February. He will be trying to make that 2-fight win streak into 3 against Nurmagomedov. The 30-year-old Dagestani is 15-2 overall. He's 4-1 in the UFC. Won his first 2 fights in the UFC, including a first-round knockout of Ricardo Ramos that has aged pretty well, then lost a unanimous decision to Rony Barcelos. Has come back from that with back-to-back wins over Mark Striegel and Cody Stamann. Most recent of those, the Stamann fight, guillotined him in like 45 seconds at UFC 270 back in January. Nurmagomedov also trying to stretch 2 straight wins into 3, heavily favored to do so. He is minus 250, Silva plus 190. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you first. I've got to say, I understand why Nurmagomedov is as big a favorite as he is, but I was still a little surprised. How do you feel about the odds? How do you feel about the matchup?
Yeah, I'm surprised by it too. Douglas Silva Andrade, he's a good fighter. He's got some pretty good wins. I think it has to do with what we talked about with having that Nurmagomedov name at the end. Always kind of bumps the odds in your favor a little bit. But Nurmagomedov, he's good. He's well-rounded. He's a good striker. He's very poised. He tends to kind of have a very Yoel Romero style to him, where he kind of lulls you to sleep and then suddenly explodes with big explosive shots. He has some serious snap on his shots. He has good power. He does make the mistake of backing straight up on the center line, which I don't like, but he has some slick Taekwondo style kicks. He gets up to your chin with such dexterity. He's really, really quick. He'll throw kicks with his punching combinations. Obviously, he has a last name Nurmagomedov, so he knows how to wrestle. Pretty good at winning scrambles and decent top control, but he is not anywhere near the wrestler like Khabib Nurmagomedov is. But that might be everybody we talk about. Douglas Silva de Andrade obviously seems like a guy we've been talking about forever. 37 years old. So based on that age, I'm so worried that he will just fall off at any time. But in fairness, he's looked really good in his past 2 fights. He's a short, compact fighter that is aggressive on his feet. He has KO power in both of his hands. He's really good at understanding where he needs to be, and that's to get into the pocket and unload power shots. He's like a little bit like a male version of Jessica Andrade, where he just doesn't know what jab is. Just I'm gonna throw power hooks and try to end the fight instantly. His left hook is deadly. He doesn't check leg kicks, which is a little concerning though. He's a very good wrestler, very good top control. But what's surprising is he's been taken down by people not nowhere near as good as, and he struggled to get back up. The one fight, and I can't get this one out of my mind because it seemed like such a terrible stylistic matchup for Vanderaa. Vanderaa took him down and held him down for long periods of time, which is really concerning. Andrade, he's not a submission threat, but he does, for a guy who just wrestles and throw power shots, he has some surprisingly really good cardio. This is a fun fight. I agree with you saying this is a much closer fight on the lines. But I got to go with the guy that they want to win, which is Nurmagomedov. I think he lands a few takedowns on Andrade. I think he's smart enough to play it safe and to avoid Andrade's power. And he just kind of rides him out to a decision.
I'm with you here. Like, I'm worried about any 37-year-old in the bantamweight division. That's, again, a division that is not kind to senior citizens. And on top of not just being 37, but 37 with a style that, as you alluded to, involves heavy cardio output. And that's something that's going to slip as you get older. I mean, on paper, who's he lost to in the UFC? I mean, he had his debut against Zahabi, who was like twice his size and a very, very good fighter. But since then, Rob Font, top contender, Petr Yan, champ, Laron Murphy, undefeated up-and-comer. Like everyone else, he's had enough for him, even if some of the individual performances have left question marks, like the Barao fight. But
well, I mean, it fits. It is former UFC champion Barao. Like, I know. No, I'm not trying to a much different fighter than he was a champion, but it's still, he lost to the. I mean, I think he actually won that fight, but it wasn't a good performance against a former. At one time, was probably the pound for pound best fighter in the world, at least in the discussion.
Yeah, well, Dana White sure told us he was. But yeah, 37 and has always been kind of injury prone. He's had like multiple layoffs of over a year. He's had multiple years where only fought once in a calendar year. You can't feel that good about a fighter like that as he pushes into his late 30s. And Nurmagomedov, probably a little better fighter on paper anyway. So I'm with you. Give me Nurmagomedov to win. Probably a really fun fight. Will be interesting to see if Nurmagomedov wants to keep this on the feet, and Douglas Silva is trying to take him down, how that dynamic plays out. But yeah, give me Nurmagomedov to sprawl and brawl, maybe not lean as heavily on his kicks as he usually does, but nonetheless win a pretty fun decision here. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC on ESPN 39, a middleweight matchup between Caio Borralho and Armen Petrosyan. Borralho, the 29-year-old Brazilian, is 11-1 with one no contest overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC after 2 appearances on Dana White's Contender Series last year. He fought in September, won a unanimous decision over Aaron Jeffrey, turned around, came back 3 weeks later and knocked out Jesse Murray. That second win was enough to punch his ticket to the UFC, where he won a 3rd-round technical decision over Gaji Omar Gadzhiev at UFC on ESPN, Luque versus Muhammad 2 in April. He'll try to keep the good vibes going against Petrosyan. The 31-year-old Armenian is 7-1 overall. He's 1-0 since joining the UFC, also out of last year's season of Dana White's Contender Series. He knocked out Kaloyan Kolev on the Contender Series. Kolev, one of the more hyped and intriguing prospects of the season, but it was Petrosyan who got the highlight reel knockout. It was he who won his way to the UFC. The UFC rewarded him with a matchup against another very promising middleweight prospect in Gregory Rodriguez, and Petrosyan won via split decision. He will be trying to make it 2 in a row against Borralho. Borralho, a moderate favorite here. He's minus 175. Petrosyan plus 150 on the comeback. Keith, we complain. I won't say we complain, but we mention a lot that the middleweight division is thin at the top. It's aging at the top. You've got the same kind of gatekeeper borderline contenders that have been there for what feels like 10 years. Your Brad Tavares's and your Derek Brunson's just there. All of them have fought each other a million times, but really this year, we've seen a lot of new blood come to this division. Both of these guys impressed on the Contender Series. Both are in the UFC. And for the moment, at least, any of these new prospects is only a couple of impressive wins away from kind of sneaking into contention before, it's probably all crowded at the top again a year or two from now. Who gets it done here? And what kind of upside do you see for either or both of these guys?
A couple of wins, and you're right there, and you're challenging middleweight champion of the world, Jared Cannonier. I mean, you're right there. So
for sure.
Just so you guys know, we recorded this before the main event of UFC 276 happened. So that would be really funny if that's actually true. I got distracted with a stupid joke. Yeah, this fight's fire. Like, we started off with two kind of newcomers. I shouldn't say newcomers. Roddy Lawrence isn't a newcomer. Well, he's fairly new in the UFC, but the kind of same way with this one, where it's like two newcomers, but the potential of these guys are really good, and the winner of this fight is taking a massive jump. So it's one of these fights, like, it's really good, but when you have so many like gatekeeper mediocre guys, I'm like, do you really have to like have both of the rising prospects? And Barrio I think he's a lot older than he's like 29, 30 years old, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. He's 29.
Yeah, he's 29. He seems like he should be younger, but it seemed like it would have been better if they matched him up with other guys. But Tresean was a guy that when I was doing tape study on him back in the day, I think he's one of the best strikers on the roster. He throws these long like pistons right down the pipe. Has really good power. He has 6 knockouts on his young record. He throws tons of kicks, leg kicks, calf kicks, body kicks, quick high kick, good footwork. The one thing I don't like is that he always circles the same way, which depending on if you're orthodox or if you're southpaw, he could be circling to your power, which I don't like. But you get inside him, he grabs a strong clinch game, busy knees. He's got some weak takedown defense though. In his last 2 fights, he's been taken down 5 times, which is obviously concerning. But he does the reason why he gets taken down, he does really well to work back to his feet. Like, he's not incompetent on the ground, and he has really good cardio. Like, he presses hard. And I apologize if I say this next guy's name, Bahayo. Is that my close?
Bahalio.
He's huge. We're talking about a middleweight. Like, he looks like a heavyweight. Like, he's a massive dude, long and lengthy, southpaw, really accurate striking, good power in his hands. He does keep his chin high, which is a big target, which I don't like. But he throws lots of kicks. He's a decent offensive wrestler, but if he gets the fight to the ground, he's got some swarming top game, some good back takes. This guy that trains with Damian Myers, who grapples one of the greatest of all time. Those long limbs that he has, he does really well. When he takes a back take to, secure one of those, kind of keeps him on. He has 3 submission wins. He's a weak defensive wrestler, but we saw in his debut, if you take him down, he can sweep you right back. So he's really dangerous to play around with. And he showed in his UFC debut, he showed really good cardio because it was such a heavy grappling fight, and he was still landing takedowns, still working hard from on top. This is a really good fight. I like both guys. One of the hardest fights to pick on the card. I really think this is just your striker versus grappler. Both guys have shown some, especially Bahalo. I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering his name. He's a much better striker than just saying he's a grappler. But I'm saying that the guys know where they want to be, where they have an advantage. The smart pick is the Brazilian. He could easily get a takedown and get a submission. But Tresean just fought Gregor Rodriguez and found a way to win. And Gregor Rodriguez is probably even better grappler, and he's also a massive guy. He's not tall, but he's just big, strong guy. I say he finds a way to keep this on the feet long enough to land some really good shots. Give me the guy that I've been backing since the Contender Series days. Give me Tresean by split decision.
I came really close to picking Tresean in the upset here as well. And like you, the thing that kind of made me want to make that pick was especially the Rodriguez fight, because Rodriguez got a couple of takedowns on him, but wasn't able to do a whole lot of work once he was there. Like, he had his hands full just kind of keeping Tresean down and wasn't really able to land much ground and pound, wasn't really able to move to dominant positions and like look for legitimate, realistic submission attempts. And because of that, Petrosian ended up winning the decision. And it was a split decision, but I at least scored that one for Petrosian. And I can see him kind of getting that same kind of performance against Borralho here. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But, I think Borralho is probably a little better striker and just a little smoother and quicker on the feet than Rodriguez is. So I think he has more routes to victory. He doesn't just have to get this thing to the ground. So I'm leaning slightly towards Borralho here. Give me Borralho by decision, but neither outcome would surprise me very much at all. And I think both these guys at least have the upside to stick around the UFC for quite a while. That brings us to the main event of UFC Vegas 58, a lightweight matchup between former champ Rafael dos Anjos and red-hot up-and-comer Rafael Fiziev. Interesting thing about this fight is that it had originally been scheduled to take place all the way back in February of this year. They then bumped it to UFC 272 in March. Fiziev tested positive for COVID, pulled out of the fight just a few days out, was replaced by Renato Moicano. Moicano stepped in. Dos Anjos won a fairly dominant decision over him. They've now remade this fight for this weekend, but Keith and I predicted this fight back, ahead of UFC 272. I'm going to splice in that ancient footage there. You may see me in a suit in that one. Don't ask. The co-main event of UFC 272 is a lightweight matchup between Rafael dos Anjos and Rafael Fiziev. The quest to figure out who's the best Rafael in the UFC. This had been scheduled to be the main event of UFC Fight Night 201 2 weeks ago. It got kicked down the road, I believe because of visa issues for Fiziev, but it is now the co-main event here, and it is certainly more than welcome as this is a high-level matchup. Dos Anjos, the former lightweight champ, is 30-13 overall. He's 19-11 in the UFC. That, however, you got to split it. It is 15-7 at lightweight, 4-4 at welterweight. So he's a 500 fighter at welterweight, kind of like BJ Penn, another former lightweight champ. He's 15-7 at lightweight and doesn't really have a whole lot of bad losses there. He celebrated his return to the lightweight division by beating Paul Felder by split decision in the main event of UFC Fight Night 182 all the way back in November of 2020. Since then, he has been on the shelf, but he is back and at least claims to be locked in at lightweight for good. Claims he thinks he has another title run in him. If so, it all starts on Saturday. He'll be taking on Fiziev. The 28-year-old Kyrgyzstani is 11-1 overall. He is 5-1 in the UFC. He lost his debut to Magomed Mustafayev by a highlight reel spinning back kick knockout in about 90 seconds. Since then, he's been perfect, winning 5 straight over Alex White, Mark Diakiese, Renato Moicano, Bobby Green, and most recently, in December at UFC on ESPN, fought versus Aldo, Brad Riddell, whom he knocked out in the 3rd round with a spinning wheel kick of his own. He is the comfortable favorite here. Fiziev minus 250 or so. Dos Anjos around plus 200. Keith, there's no respect for the former champ out there. I don't know if it's just because Fiziev has been that spectacular, because there's question about Dos Anjos' age and the long layoff, but whatever the reason, he's a 2-1, 2.5-1 underdog. Who gets it done? How does this fight play out?
All right, so when this fight was first matched up, I said, you know what I'm not going to do in the breakdown? I'm not going to do a dad joke and say, I'm going to take Rafael, or in this case, Rafael. It doesn't work too good when it's pronounced differently. But I said, I'll leave the dad jokes to somebody else. So I want to throw out some love, which we don't do this enough. I'm going to throw out some love to a really good show with two really good analysts. One is called The Fight Analyst, Garrett Kerman, and then his partner is the Fight Professor, Colin Crandall from the MMA Power. Both are really good dudes. Colin Crandall is the ultimate like dad joke guy. He'll call me up and he always got like dad jokes for me. Just a really good dude. I want you guys to check out his show, and I'm predicting right now. I'm not sure how any of my predictions will go on this card, but I'm predicting right now Colin will make a dad joke based on Rafael versus Rafael. So check that show out and see if I'm right. And our show will come out first. So I think they're more near the end of the week. So check out that show and tell me if he does. But man, so back to this one. So when you have 14 fights, 28 guys in the fight, you can't do enough tape study on every fight as you want. Rafael dos Anjos was the guy that I definitely wanted to. He was number one on my list and who I wanted to look into and kind of see what they have, see if he's washed up or not. I saw a lot of things I liked still from RDA. Yeah, he's 37 and obviously he's been out for like over a year now, or going on almost a year and a half since we've last seen him fight, which I know he didn't want to happen. And at 37, as we just talked about the last fight, like it could all fall apart instantly at 37. But based on what I've last seen him, he's still well-rounded. Southpaw with high output, not many tells, little short shots, attacks with combinations. He loves that lead left, throwing the straight power shot down the pipe, which lands for him. Underrated power for his entire career. He can start you. A lot of good calf kicks. He has taken a lot of damage over the years. You figure like the Tony Ferguson fight, the Colby Covington fight. I mean, he got knocked out by Eddie Alvarez, obviously. But he still moves forward, eating shots while landing better shots. Inside, good close quarter striking. It's weird. This is gonna sound weird, but for such an accomplished BJJ black belt, I actually think he's underrated, like grappler, an underrated wrestler. Specifically, his wrestling, because he's taken down some really good guys that I thought was better wrestlers than on paper, and he still gets the fight to the ground. Obviously, he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, has 10 submission wins, never been submitted ever in his entire career. He's got good cardio still. I mean, his last fight against Paul Fielder, still going hard, throwing combination 25 minutes into the fight, which is this fight 20? This fight's 25 minutes, isn't it? Did they? Because I know it was the main event and they kept it 25, right?
I believe they kept it as a 5-round co-main. Yes.
Yeah, which is good for them. It's good, because Fiziev deserves that like 5-round fight. So, and then obviously he's got so much high. Not only does he have experience, he obviously has so much high level experience. RDA, which is tough. Now move on to Fiziev. Fiziev is a guy that, obviously he's been the opposite. He's been very active. We've been talking about him. I mean, I said last time, I led with this last time, I'm going to say it again. His striking is off the charts. I mean, a Tiger Muay Thai guy, while I still think he's undersized for the weight class, he's so skilled. He's southpaw, but he really switches and fights constantly out of both stances. So technically sound, just like RDA said, not a lot of tells, or really no tells. He's explosive, blazing fast, crisp, snapping, really recoils the shot, so he's not like, when you as fast as you throw a punch out, it's supposed to be the same speed that comes back. And a lot of guys don't do that. A lot of guys do this like dropping, rechambering. Not him. Super fast. He's so good at sliding in and out of the pocket, unloading shots. He throws combination when he attacks. He cuts off the cage well. He's got huge power. He's good at sliding out of the way attacks with some of the best head movement you'll see. Just sliding out of the way of attack, but still leaving himself close enough where he can come right back with a combination. And if not, he also kind of has this high guard thing going. Some of the best body kicks you'll see in MMA. Good leg kicks. He'll just check. I love how he'll just like throw a high kick up to the face, just quick, just out of the blue, like just to check you, keep you honest, make you thinking about it. He'll throw in a fun spinning attack. I mean, you go back to the Brad Liddell spinning wheel kick, which started the knockout. Great clinch game. Loves the plumb clinch, knees and elbows. Good offensive wrestler. Good defensive wrestler. Not much of a submission. Literally, the only thing you break down is you say he's not as much of a submission threat. That's it. So it's, and then he obviously doesn't have the high level experience RDA. So as I said, I watched a lot of RDA. He showed me a lot more than I expected, and I definitely don't think he's done. That said, I think this might be the easiest pick on the entire card. This is a passing of the torch fight. RDA is going to have to try to turn this into a wrestling match. He's going to have to turn it into this grueling clinch battling affair. I just don't think he's going to be able to. I think Fiziev is going to be too fast for him. You just talked about Brian Mitchell trying to get into Barboza, and Barboza's going to challenge his footwork, challenge his angles, all that. That's what Fiziev's going to do to RDA. I just see him beat him to the punch. I see him able to stuff the takedowns. I see him throwing huge arsenal of attacks, all kinds of weapons, spinning elbows, the high kicks, low kicks, deep kick, everything. You said RDA's championship run starts on Sunday. It might start on Sunday. It's also ending on Sunday. What am I saying? Sunday, Saturday. It might start on Saturday. It's ending Saturday, because RDA hardly ever gets knocked out. I think it happens this fight. Give me Fiziev. I'm going to see if Fiziev knocks him out in the third round.
Yeah, I mean, let me, get the spoiler out of the way. I'm going with Fiziev as well. I do think there is more intrigue and more, I think, upset potential than it sounds like you do, because where I saw RDA come up against the wall at welterweight was when he ran into guys where he wasn't the better wrestler or he wasn't the physical bully. Because at lightweight, he's always been a bully. Like, whether he's winning with his striking or he's winning on the ground, a lot of it springs from being the guy that's able to tell where the fight takes place. Whether he's just taking Anthony Pettis down and, just grinding him out, or he's the aggressor on the feet and he's just like wiping out someone like Donald Cerrone. I think what makes his game run is when he is the better wrestler. And when he ran into welterweights like Covington and Usman, who basically could do to him RDA things that he used to do to lightweights, that's where he hit his ceiling. I'm with you that Fiziev I think he's going to beat Dos Anjos, and I think it's going to be a coming out party, but he's going to need to do something that not many people have done to Dos Anjos. Like, he's going to need to, I think he's going to need to hurt him early, like start hitting him with power early and give him something to think about. Don't let him get into his comfort zone. Don't let him clinch and just run you to the fence. And he's just going to need to beat Dos Anjos and not really give him a chance to get his grindy approach untracked. Because of that, even though I think there's more potential here for Dos Anjos to weather the storm and kind of run his game against Fiziev and start taking him down and start wearing him out, I think Fiziev is going to hit him early, hit him often. Give me Fiziev by first round knockout. I'm with you. It's a coming out party. It's the kind of name victory he needs to get into the title picture at lightweight. And passing of the torch moment. Keith, is there anything you want to add in light of the time that's passed or the Moicano fight that makes you think differently about this?
Yeah, the one thing RDA and Moicano, Keith, you mentioned taking on days notice. RDA looked fantastic. I mean, he beat the brakes off of Moicano, which I definitely feel better about RDA moving forward. I mean, he looked good against Paul Felder. He looked good in that fight. But again, like, he didn't show me enough where he's still aging. I'm bet on Fiziev. I really think he could win the title one day. Like, I'm that high on this guy.
That's it. The preview for UFC on ESPN 39, Dos Anjos versus Fiziev. I've been your host, Ben Duffy of SureDog.com. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time watching the Schillen and Duffy Show, first of all, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. And more importantly, please show up for the recap. We are live on the SureDog YouTube page 10 to 15 minutes after the main event. Normally, it is both Keith and me taking your questions, comments, hot takes through the YouTube live chat, breaking down everything that was good, bad, or controversial on this card. I believe on this Saturday, Keith will not be there, so I'll either be solo or I'll have a special guest. But in either event, the main attraction for us is the interaction with you live in the moment after these events. So please do be sure to join us. Between now and then, thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week and enjoy the fights.